Every single player who has ever sat down at a poker tournament table has made the same mistake before playing a single hand. They decided they wanted to win. And that decision, that one invisible choice made before the cards are even in the air, is the root cause of more lost tournaments, more blown stacks, more emotional collapses, and more wasted potential than any technical leak any solver could ever identify. The desire to win poker is the thing that is stopping you from winning poker. And before this video ends, you are going to understand exactly why, and more importantly, exactly what to replace it with. Here is what nobody in the poker training world has the courage to say directly. Winning is not a strategy. Winning is not a goal. Winning is not even something you can try to do. Winning is a byproduct. It is what happens when you do something else correctly, consistently, over time, at a level most players never reach because they are too busy trying to win. Phil Ivey has said in interviews that he thinks about nothing but the decision directly in front of him. Feder Holes, who turned a few $100s into tens of millions, said publicly that his entire mental game was built around one principle: detachment from results. Not because results do not matter, because attachment to results destroys the process that creates them. The neuroscience behind this is devastating in its clarity. When your brain is oriented toward a goal it cannot directly control, like winning a tournament, it enters a state of chronic low-grade threat monitoring. Your amygdala stays partially activated throughout the session, scanning for signs that the goal is in danger. Every bad beat, every lost pot, every aggressive 3-bet from the player on your left is processed not as information, but as threat. And a brain in threat mode does not think clearly. It contracts, it plays scared, it makes the call it should not make, and folds the hand it should not fold, not because of bad strategy, but because the nervous system is trying to protect the goal instead of execute the process. Stop trying to win poker. The players who win are trying to do something else entirely. Stay with me, because what comes next is going to change every session you play from this moment forward. There is a concept in sports psychology called outcome orientation versus process orientation, studied for decades across every high-performance domain on Earth. Olympic athletes, military surgeons, top-tier financial traders, elite special operations soldiers, in every field, the research points to the same conclusion. Performers who focus on outcomes during performance get worse outcomes. Performers who focus on process during performance get better outcomes. The paradox is real, documented, and one of the most ignored insights in all of competitive poker. Here is what outcome orientation looks like at a poker table. 70 players remaining, money bubble approaching, average stack. A spot comes up where you have second pair on a wet board and your opponent makes a significant bet. The mathematically correct play given ranges, bet sizing, and board texture is a call. But you do not call. You fold. Not because you calculated incorrectly, because somewhere in the background of your mind, you are thinking about the money, about surviving, about winning. Outcome orientation just cost you expected value, and you didn't even feel it happen. Now process orientation in the exact same spot. You have no awareness of the prize pool beyond what is strategically relevant. One question only. What is the highest quality decision I can make right now with the information available? You make the call. Maybe you lose the pot, maybe you win it. It does not matter to your next decision, because your next decision will also be evaluated purely on its own quality. Compounded across hundreds of decisions in a single tournament, this is the difference between a player who occasionally goes deep and a player who consistently goes deep. Research from Anders Ericsson, the world's foremost expert on deliberate practice, showed that elite performers in every domain share one characteristic above all others. They are obsessively focused on the quality of the process during execution, and they evaluate results only after the fact, for learning, never during performance. They do not try to win. They try to execute perfectly. And perfect execution, repeated consistently, produces winning as its natural consequence. Let me show you two players. Same tournament, same field, same structure. Player 1 is running well. 3 hours in, 3 times the starting stack, thinking about the final table, already rehearsing the chip leader feeling in his mind. Player 2 has taken 2 bad beats in the first 3 levels, slightly below starting stack. He has consciously reset his frame twice, using a protocol he built over months of deliberate practice. Thinking about nothing except the next decision. Who makes it deeper? Experienced players say player 2 every time, because they have been player 1. They know what happens when the ego gets involved in a session going well. The overconfidence, The slightly loose calls that individually seem fine, but collectively represent a complete departure from the discipline that built the stack. And they know what happens when the inevitable cooler arrives. Player 1 collapses. Player 2 is not trying to win the tournament. He is trying to win the next decision. He has broken the tournament down into its atomic unit, the individual decision, and decided that excellence at that level is the only thing he can legitimately pursue. Everything else, the chips, the money, the bracelet, is a downstream consequence of that singular focus. When you stop chasing the win stops chasing you away. Fear of elimination disappears, because elimination is no longer a threat to your goal. Your goal is the next decision, and no bad beat can take that from you. Tilt becomes structurally impossible, because tilt is the emotional response to outcomes threatening a results-oriented goal. Remove the results-oriented goal, and you remove the architecture that makes tilt possible. This is not positive thinking. This is neurological engineering applied to tournament poker. Now the concrete tools. Because philosophy without tools is just entertainment. And this video is transformation. The first tool is decision quality scoring. After every significant decision, whether a fold, a call, a raise, or a bluff, assign it a score from 1 to 5, based purely on the quality of the process that produced it. Not the outcome, the process. Did you have a clear read on ranges? Did you account for position, stack depth, and ICM appropriately? Did you decide from a regulated emotional state, or were you compromised? 5 means the process was excellent. 1 means it was poor. The outcome is completely irrelevant to this score. Within 30 days of tracking this consistently, you will discover something that changes your relationship with poker permanently. Your decision quality score and your results begin to correlate over time. Not perfectly, but the trend becomes undeniable. For the first time, a metric you can actually control. The second tool is the pre-hand reset protocol. Before every hand you choose to enter, take one single breath. 4 seconds in, hold briefly, release slowly. In that breath, you set one intention. Make the highest quality decision available with the information I have right now. Not win this hand, not protect my stack. One clean intention, every time without exception. The third tool is the tournament clock reframe. At any point when you notice your mind going to results, to prize pool calculations, to the possibility of winning, you use one internal phrase to interrupt it. I have one job. The next decision. That phrase pulls the prefrontal cortex back to the present moment before the emotional system can take over. These 3 tools together create what behavioral scientists call implementation intentions, specific when-then plans that research shows are 4 times more effective at changing behavior than general goals. They work because they do not require willpower in the moment, and it executes itself. The complete framework for building this system across an entire tournament career is inside Collection 2. 10 ebooks and 5 premium bonus books, $29.89. Link in the pinned comment. Here is something from the 2019 World Series of Poker the broadcast did not cover. A player who finished in the top 10 of the main event was asked what he was thinking about during the final 3 days. His answer stopped the interviewer cold. He said, "I was thinking about breathing. I was thinking about my feet on the floor. I was thinking about the texture of the felt under my fingers. I was not thinking about winning. Every time my mind went to the result, I brought it back to the physical present. And every time I came back to the physical present, my reads got sharper and my decisions got cleaner." That player described, without the technical term, a practice called interoceptive anchoring, a technique used by trauma surgeons, fighter pilots, and elite military personnel to maintain maximum cognitive function under extreme pressure. Interoception is the brain's awareness of its own internal state: breath, heart rate, muscle tension, temperature. When you direct attention to interoceptive signals during performance, you pull the brain out of future-oriented outcome-focused mode, which degrades decision quality, and return it to present-moment information processing mode, which optimizes it. Applied to poker, this means something radical. The most powerful thing you can do in a critical moment, when the pot is enormous and the decision matters most, is to not think about the pot. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice the weight of your hands on the table. Become aware of your breath without changing it. In that 3 to 5 second return to the body, your prefrontal cortex comes back fully online. Stanford neuroscience research shows this type of present moment anchoring reduces stress-induced decision errors by up to 40% in high-stakes conditions. 40% fewer stress-induced errors across a 10-level tournament. And here's what makes this extraordinary at the final table. While you anchor and process information cleanly, the players around you run outcome simulations, worry about chip counts, and make progressively worse decisions as pressure increases. You are playing a different game. A calmer, cleaner, more precise game. And at the final table, when pressure is at its absolute maximum, that difference becomes a canyon. Let us talk about identity. Because everything covered so far are techniques. And techniques only work when supported by something deeper. They need to be supported by who you believe yourself to be. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett showed that the brain is a prediction machine that constantly generates experience based on its existing models. Your identity is one of the most powerful models your brain uses to predict and produce behavior. Which means your identity at the table is not just how you feel about yourself. It is what you automatically do under pressure without consciously choosing it. If you identify as a results-oriented player, someone who wins or loses, who runs good or runs bad, then every technique in this video will eventually fight against that identity and lose. Because identity always wins over technique in the long run. The brain consistently acts to confirm the identity it holds, even when those actions are self-destructive. A results-oriented identity will always pull you back to caring about outcomes. It will always find a way to let the prize pool into your decision-making, even when you are trying to keep it out. But if you identify as a process player, as a decision quality specialist who plays poker, then every technique flows naturally from who you are. You do not force the scoring, because it is exactly what a process player does. You do not force the breathing, because of course a process player manages their state. The identity carries the techniques automatically. So here is the identity shift. You are not a poker player trying to win tournaments. You are a decision quality specialist who plays poker. Your job is not to win. Your job is to make the highest quality decisions available in every situation you face. The wins are the natural consequence of doing your job well across thousands of decisions. The players who internalize this stop suffering when they lose and start learning instead. Every session, win or lose, becomes evidence. And that relationship with the game is sustainable forever. Here is the most advanced concept in this entire video. You have earned it by getting here. The concept is called variance acceptance architecture, the framework that separates players who sustain elite performance through downswings from players who collapse. Most players intellectually understand variance. They know a losing session does not mean bad play. They know a 70% favorite loses 30% of the time. They know all of this, and then they tilt anyway. Why? Because intellectual understanding and emotional architecture are different systems in the brain. You can understand variance in your cortex and still have your amygdala fire catastrophically when you lose a significant pot. The intellectual knowledge lives in the prefrontal cortex. The emotional response lives in the limbic system. In the heat of the moment, the limbic response fires 200 milliseconds before the cortex can engage. This is why knowing that variance is real does not stop tilt. The knowledge and the response operate on different timescales and completely different neural hardware. Variance acceptance architecture solves this by building emotional familiarity with losing in advance, so that when real losses occur, the emotional response is already calibrated. 3 times per week for 10 minutes, you sit quietly and vividly imagine specific painful losing scenarios. You imagine losing a crucial river pot as a massive favorite. You imagine busting one away from the money with a hand you played correctly. You imagine a 3-session downswing where every cooler goes wrong, full sensory detail. And crucially, you imagine yourself responding with complete equanimity. The calm acknowledgement that this is part of the game, that your process was correct, that the next decision will also be made correctly. This is stress inoculation through cognitive rehearsal. The military uses it for combat preparation. Surgeons use it for worst-case scenarios. What it does neurologically is build a pre-established response pathway for the emotional brain. When the real loss occurs, the brain recognizes it not as novel catastrophe, but as a familiar scenario with a known correct response. Amygdala activation is smaller. Recovery is faster. Decision quality in the hands immediately following the loss is dramatically better. You pre-built your resilience before you needed it. And when you need it, we are in the final stretch. Here is the complete picture of what you are actually building. You are not building a poker strategy. You are building a performance system, a set of interconnected habits, protocols, mindset frameworks, and identity structures that continuously optimize your decision-making capacity and improve your ability to execute under pressure. A performance system that a bad run cannot destroy. Because a bad run is just variance acting on a system that remains intact. The system keeps producing high-quality decisions. The math eventually corrects. The results follow. The architecture you have been building, identity as foundation, process orientation on the first floor, decision quality scoring on the second, pre-hand reset protocol on the third, interoceptive anchoring on the fourth, variance acceptance architecture on the fifth. And the roof is what all of this creates together. A player whose performance does not depend on running well. A player who is dangerous in any condition, at any stack depth, in any emotional state the tournament creates. That player exists. You have met them at the table without knowing it. The person who seems unaffected by the bad beat. The person who plays the same, whether chip leader or short stack. The person who makes the difficult fold and moves on without a trace of visible emotion. That person built a system. Now you know what the system looks like. You know its components. You know its logic. You know how to build it for yourself. The question is no longer whether you can become that player. You can. The only question is whether you will do the work. Here is where I leave you. And I want these words to stay with you long after this video ends. Every tournament you have ever entered, you sat down wanting to win. There is nothing wrong with that desire. It brought you to this game. It made you study. It made you care enough to be here right now. But the desire to win, when it becomes the operating goal during play, becomes a cage. It locks you inside a performance that is always reacting to what might happen, always evaluating each hand against the dream of the win, always making decisions slightly contaminated by hope and fear, instead of being driven purely by information and logic. The players who consistently make final tables have made a different peace with this game. They accepted that they cannot control whether they win. They can only control whether they make the best decision available right now. And they discovered through thousands of hours and thousands of tournaments that this acceptance is not resignation. It is freedom. The freedom to play without fear. The freedom to make the difficult fold because it is correct. The freedom to make the aggressive play because the range analysis demands it. The freedom to sit at any table and know that your performance does not depend on the cards. That freedom is what great poker feels like from the inside. And once you feel it, you will never want to play any other way. You can have it. Everything in this video is the path to it. And if you want the complete map, every protocol, every framework, every exercise built into a structured system, you can follow tournament by tournament and session by session. It is all inside Collection 2. 10 ebooks and 5 premium bonus books. $29.89. Not for content, for the freedom I just described. For the system that gives you a game that holds under any pressure. The link is in the pinned comment below. If this video gave you something real, if something here shifted the way you see this game, subscribe to this channel right now. Every single week, we go deeper into the intersection of neuroscience, philosophy, psychology, and tournament poker. Not to entertain you, to transform how you think and how you play. The players who find this channel and stay are building something most players will never have. A game that does not break under pressure, in any condition, against any opponent, at any stage of any tournament. Share this video with one player who needs it. Not for the views, because you know someone who loves this game, studies hard, cares deeply, and is still suffering every time the variance goes against them. This video is the answer to that suffering. And you have the chance to give it to them today. Stop trying to win poker. Start trying to make the best decision available right now. Do that across every hand, every level, every tournament. And watch what winning looks like when it finally arrives, not as a goal you chased, but as the natural consequence of everything you built.